Mike, I'm going to interrupt our conversation about Angela's murder to find out what you think of these muffin meatloaves.
This is I Don't Even Own a Television, Murdered by Wine, a Cedar Bay Cozy Mystery. 1, 2, 3.
There are books that are good, there are books that are bad. There's some books so fucking awful you wish you never had read them at all, 'cause a novel can ruin your life. Hey buddy, I don't even own a television.
Welcome to I Don't Even Own a Television. It's a podcast about bad books. My name is J.W. Friedman.
And I'm Chris. Take me down to Cedar Bay Collision.
We're here to talk about one of my favorite genres, and I'm not being ironic, the cozy mystery, which I would say is kind of generally represented by, something kind of old-fashioned, low stakes. I mean, as low stakes as a murder can be, but, a mystery that kind of involves, maybe older folks and is a little genteel.
Probably has an amateur sleuth in it. Somebody who not only just kind of tends to get caught up in mysteries and murders, but likes to tell strangers that she just kind of happens to get caught up in mysteries and murders.
Yeah, and usually there's a scene at the end where everyone gathers together in one room, and our lead character describes how she arrived at her conclusion and then accuses the criminal, and everyone goes home happy except for the evildoer.
Right. Well, and whoever had the misfortune of being murdered.
Yeah, that's true. But I would say it's a very pastoral genre.
Uh-huh.
I enjoy reading them because there is an element of predictability in it in a lot of ways, and also I find, which is a weird thing to say about books about murder, but I find them pretty peaceful. There's never a lot of surprises, I would say, in a cozy mystery, and I think that's part of the appeal for sure.
So drop some names here. What kind of is this a descendant of like Miss Marple?
Definitely, Miss Marple. Just about anything Agatha Christie wrote.
Joanna Fluke, Marion Chesney's work as MC Beaton, Janet Quinn Harkin, Laura Childs. It's a genre where the primary practitioners are mostly women, as well as the protagonists, and they're generally pretty small town affairs with a small cast of characters that interacts a great deal.
And unfortunately, this is not a good one.
Well, okay, so we needed a big shift. We'd been like hip deep in extremely doodly books for a while. We were talking about that.
Yeah.
We were trying to break away from that. We were kind of brainstorming, and I was like, I don't know, you love cozy mysteries, and you got that glint in your eye.
I did, because there was a series I had heard of, the Cedar Bay Cozy Mysteries by Diane Harmon, who we should mention right off the bat is a multiple bestseller. But when I went to research closer, it turns out she's a USA Today bestseller, which I think says a lot about the demographic that this book appeals to. Old people.
Yeah, as opposed to the hip young things who end up selling books that get marked on the New York Times bestseller list.
I'm just saying, USA Today has a specific demographic, and this book definitely, I can see how it appeals to them. But I wanted to read one in particular because we make a lot of jokes about weed dads on the show. And as a result, a lot of people have made jokes back to us about wine moms being the equivalent of weed dads. So when I found out there was a Diane Harmon book called Murdered by Wine, I was like, this is the perfect kind of antithesis to all of the total doodly stuff we've been doing.
And it actually gives kind of a weirdly dislocated experience to the project of reading this book, because this is, if I remember right, the 13th book in the what is it called? Cedar Bay Cozy Mystery series. And so anytime anything inexplicable happens, which is every couple pages, I'm scratching a note in my little notebook being like, is this a thing? Like, is this just a callback to something I don't know about? And like longtime listeners will know, I sure do love to start a series at episode 13.
I mean, yes, most of these books take place in our protagonist's hometown, which is Cedar Bay in Oregon.
Cedar Bay, Oregon.
Beaver County.
In Beaver County. That we'll probably talk. Actually, we won't talk about this later. That drove me fucking nuts. There's plenty of ludicrous places in Oregon. You don't have to make up a whole county. And if you do have to make a whole county, do you have to make a county named something that is going to make me, a 13-year-old boy, snicker every time I read it? Like, I am basically wearing a cap that says Sheriff of Beaver County.
You
right
have been
now.
working that joke a lot in our text messages lately. But yeah, so and this one, basically, our heroes go on a road trip. And should be mentioned right now, they're on a destination trip to Sonoma County to go do some wine tasting.
Right.
Unfortunately, right now in real life, Sonoma County is being ravaged by wildfires, which made a lot of this slightly difficult to read. So we're going to ask you, the listener, to do a little bit of extrapolation and recognize that this is just some very bad timing on our part.
Yeah, this is a very escapist book, as I'm sure we will talk about in a few different ways. And one of the things that it allowed me to escape, but occasionally was slightly difficult to escape, is the fact that one of my favorite parts of the world has been on fire since like last October. And it's just unimaginable up there.
Yeah, and
right
definitely, we have nothing but sympathy for the people who are dealing with this right now. However, that's what this book is about, so it is what it is. And, we'll try to be sensitive about that, but the rest of this is pretty hilarious, I'm sorry to say.
I'm getting the sense that you liked this slightly less than I did.
Oh gosh, I did. And I think it may be because I enjoy this genre, so I'm very well versed in what I would consider the high bar, where I feel like you're kind of not so versed with it, so you're willing to lower that bar substantially.
I know there was a character named Miss Marple, and that's about what I know about the Cozy Mystery.
Gotcha. I guess we should do a plot in 60 seconds before we keep going about this. Oh, you know what, though? I did want to call out. We're reading a book that is called Murder by Wine. Mm-hmm. First of all, I'm very impressed by the fact that the title is actually what happened.
Oh, yeah.
The person in this book was murdered by wine. It's not just a clever phrase. So
No.
big thumbs up for that.
Yeah.
And two, we are both celebrating this this book, this kind of exploration of the sophisticated palate by drinking, in your case, large tall boy of Miller High Life, and in my case, small cans of Budweiser, because we're very classy men.
You had to blow up my spot?
I blew up my own spot, too. I think High Life is preferable to Bud, but Bud
So do
was
I.
$8.99 for 12 of them, so...
We would have to do some math. Listeners, I'm not a smart man. This is why I rely on spreadsheets to do my math for me. My 48 ounces of Miller High Life were $5 exactly.
I win. If that's what you're going for.
On the per ounce count?
Oh, for sure. These are 12 ounces each, and I have 12 of them. And it was $8.99. It's 144 ounces, man.
So mine would be 96 ounces for $10.
Yeah, I won.
Yep.
Sorry.
Unfortunately, you have to drink Budweiser, my man.
That's true. So in the long run, kind of took the L. But let's get into a plot in 60 seconds here, because then I want to talk a little bit about the characters. But first, I think people need to know what's going on in the story. So here's a song.
Nobody knows if you finish or not. You got 60 seconds to give them a plot. Plot in 60 seconds.
All right, so plot in 60 seconds. Collision, you're going to have 1 minute to summarize the very cozy and murderous events of this book for our listening audience at home. Are you ready?
I'm not, so let me just preface this up front. I usually put a lot more work into my plot in 60s than I was able or willing to do this time. So I'm going to just front load this by saying I put about 60 seconds of work into this plot into 60, which I suspect may have been a similar amount of work that our author put into the plot, as I hope to lay bare.
This was an outline scribbled on a winery tasting room napkin for sure.
Yeah.
But are you ready?
Yes.
Go.
Kelly and Mike are amiable Oregon grandparents. Kelly owns a coffee shop in Cedar Bay, Oregon, and her husband is the sheriff of Beaver County, Oregon. And I keep saying Oregon. They wish to go visit Kelly's children, her daughter and husband, in Sonoma for a vacation. Meanwhile, Sonoma, you know it, you love it. It's a valley. There's vineyards everywhere. And the most important vineyards are two vineyards. One of them, Angela, a raven-haired beauty.
There's several of those in this book.
Is the greatest vintner, the greatest winemaker in all of Sonoma, which vexes many people, possibly none more so than her husband Matteo, a hot-blooded Italian man.
I'm so glad you said hot-blooded. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
Who does things like stomp out the door with an angry, bitter look on his face. Then Angela, who has a penchant for trying the wine every night at exactly 7, does so, but gets pushed into the wine vat and killed.
You're already way over, but we'll just keep rolling. It's cool.
At which point, Kelly and Mike, because of a plot contrivance, are rendered child and grandchildless by a fever, and thus have some time freed up to punctuate their sightseeing, not end their sightseeing, but punctuate their sightseeing with some cursory poking intos of this murder, where we discover other men like Bob, the red herring UPS man, who definitely is in love with Angela, Jim Barstow, the red herring winery manager, who is not in love with Angela, but he hates to see her leave. But he loves to watch her go.
Yeah.
Matteo's boss, who casually makes a joke to his employee Matteo about, wouldn't it be funny if Matteo's wife were murdered?
Yeah, that's a good way to talk to your employees.
Extremely good and cool. Anyway.
You forgot Alessandra.
I did.
Femme fatale.
I just hadn't gotten to Alessandra.
Oh, okay.
Matteo's cousin, rival winery owner. Anyway. Then it all gets wrapped up, and I usually don't do this in Plot 60, but I'm going to tell you how this ends.
Okay, yeah, spoiler alert, everyone.
Kelly discovers, because of some of the most deftly handled clue dropping I've ever seen, which led me to do things in, like, my notes for Chapter 2, I have a 2-word note in all caps that reads, Sandal Clue!
Oh, we need to table the sandals for now. But don't put your sandals on the table. That's gross.
Ew. Yeah, because of sandals, nothing happens. What happens is Kelly, after a nice wine lunch and sharing a charcuterie platter with her husband, has to go to the bathroom, where she overhears the waitress talking on the phone about how she thinks
her roommate has committed murder and mentions her by name. Surprise, it's Alessandra. And that is how this case is solved. This is the dumbest mystery ever written. And I know we've gone way beyond 60 seconds and just blown the whole segment, but like, it is so dumb. Like, there's no clues anywhere in this. The whole thing is solved because she overhears someone in the bathroom stall next to her talking on a cell phone saying, I need to move out. My roommate keeps saying she committed murder.
Like, it's the difference between, like, all the pieces of a mystery are here. They're just not put together the way a mystery would be put together. It's like the difference between a bag of Legos and a completed Lego project.
Yeah, I mean, there's something I want to mention is the actual murder takes place at the very, very beginning of this book. Right? It's like chapter 2 or 3 is when Angela is murdered.
Right.
Chapters... I want to say it's 6.
4 through about 12.
Yeah, but at the end of this section, after the murder happens, our heroes are getting ready to go on their vacation to Sonoma still. I think this is supposed to be a flashback. I think it's supposed to happen before. But they have a toast to, quote-unquote, their enjoyable few days. And then at the end of the chapter, we get a one-sentence paragraph that reads, if murder makes for an enjoyable few days, then his toast was appropriate. But if not... ... This is like literally 12 chapters after the murder occurs in the story. That's not how you write a fucking mystery.
It's also just, it's amazing. Like, the mystery, we'll say, for the sake of argument, takes place in chapter 3. The investigation of the mystery then does not actually start until about chapter 12 or 13, because we've got some sightseeing to do, my friends, and we've got some well-drawn, interesting characters to meet along the way.
But I do want to just go out on a kind of a tangent here in that, like, how to put this. People really like the Game of Thrones books, right? And a lot of the criticisms that I read of the Game of Thrones books are that the only thing George R.R. Martin likes describing with any detail is food.
That's not a criticism. That's just you and what you like about the books.
Well, yeah, that might be true. This book takes that to a whole new level, to the point where there are actually recipes in the back of the book. And I would say the closest the book comes to being well written at any given point in time is when it's describing various meals that the two of these people are ordering at restaurants. It's really good at making you hungry.
Yeah.
Really bad at making you wonder who done it, but really good about making you think, maybe meatloaf in a muffin shape would be pretty good.
I agree with everything you said, except that I don't think it does a bad job of making you wonder who done it, because there's just no way to fucking tell.
See, I guessed it from like probably the second thing. No,
You couldn't have, because she's not introduced until like...
No, but the minute they introduced her, I knew that she had done it, and I'll tell you exactly why. This book is written by someone that hates young people, and she's the only one of two young people in this book that isn't related to the protagonist, and the other one is just too damn obvious because they keep pointing out how sharp her elbows are and how she's this recent UC Davis graduate student and a quote-unquote millennial.
But that's not the one who does the murder.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's too obvious, right?
Okay,
Because
okay,
she's
okay.
very careerist, and she's
Okay,
always
that's
talking
fair.
about how she wants to take over Angela's job.
Right.
Meanwhile, Alessandra, the raven-haired beauty from
Yeah,
Italy,
the
who
other
wants to
raven-haired
move
beauty.
in on Matteo.
Can I just read you how the introduction of Alessandra?
Yes, please. And this will, to the listeners at home who are familiar with the cozy mystery genre, this should give you a pretty good clue of why I figured it was her from the minute she was introduced. Please continue.
Just then, there was a knock on the door. "Come in," Carlos said, pausing to see who was entering. "Ah, Alessandra, what can I do for you?" Carlos didn't miss the lingering glance Matteo gave her, and couldn't blame him. If she wasn't his niece, he'd probably do the same.
Gross.
Nor did he miss the flirtatious look she gave Matteo. It was hard not to feel carnal longings for the sultry-looking 27-year-old dark-haired Italian beauty, with pouty lips and a body even movie stars would envy. She was dressed in a low-necked fitted red sweater that showed off her ample cleavage. Tight jeans and a wide, tightly clenched belt highlighted her small waist and long legs. She wore a pair of rubber-soled sandals with dark blue socks,
Sexy.
which seemed out of place with the rest of her outfit. My note on that when I read this is like, she's the walking embodiment of the sexy saxophone riff.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot read that without hearing just like, wah, 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 wah.
Until it gets down to like her ankles, and then all of a sudden it turns into like a John Zorn squawk. Like,
I mean, nobody's perfect, man.
needle comes off the record. Yeah, so I don't know. To me, that is the way you introduce a villain in this kind of book, especially a book that is written by someone who obviously is not fond of young people, is especially not fond of attractive young women, and goes out of her way to let you know that many times.
I mean, I guess I could have seen the shoe dropping or the sandal dropping.
I was going to say
if you
the
will.
sandal dropping, yeah.
When in the next paragraph, which I didn't read, she's literally described as wringing her gloved hands.
Yeah, I mean, she's like, if she were a male character, she'd be twirling her mustache.
Yeah. Speaking of mustache, the first time Matteo is mentioned, he has a giant, bushy Italian mustache. Never again in the book is that mustache mentioned.
Oh, no.
Which I thought is hilarious.
But you know what is?
His ponytail and rockin' wine guy bod.
I was going to say his ponytail. Yeah, like every single scene is like, he had his hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, and he was wearing a white T-shirt that accentuated his hot-blooded Italian muscles.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely fireman calendar levels
Yes.
of sex in
Yes,
this book.
100%.
There's not a this is as G-rated as a murder mystery can get, and we've had some experience in that lately.
Yeah, we have.
But yeah, the vision of what a hot guy is like is very familiar to you if you've ever watched like the 7 o'clock hour of network television. You know, it's kind of a Lorenzo Lamas looking guy.
Yeah.
So sexy, but seems handleable. Like
Yeah.
not real threatening.
Yeah, but always wearing a really tight white T-shirt.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and a ponytail for
Yeah,
some reason.
spotlessly clean white t-shirt.
Yeah, I guess we should do high points, low points. I'm trying to think if there's anything else like really that we need to get off the top.
That you have to know. I mean, one thing you do have to know is that it's very explicit. And when I mean I say explicit, I mean explicit. That Mike is really the lawman. He's the sheriff. But he's just come to understand that his wife just has a knack for getting to the heart of the matter.
Actually, I'm really glad you mentioned Mike because I had a lot of thoughts about Mike that I wanted to get into here. In that he's the sheriff, he's the lawman.
Yeah.
But what he really likes to do is poke holes in all the shit his wife enjoys. Like, he is such a cranky bastard. It's impossible to read this book and not just come out of it being like,
Really?
fuck this dude. Yeah, I mean, seriously, like, at one point, they check into a hotel. She's admiring the furniture, and his response is, well, it must be a reproduction. It has a USB charger built into it. And shit like that. And, like, they go out at one point to a fancy restaurant and have a prefix meal.
Yeah.
And he spends the next 3 chapters subtly complaining about how much it costs without actually mentioning the price. Just being like, if you had any idea how much that cost. It's like, he's such an asshole. It drove me insane. But, like, he's the kind of, how do you describe it? I don't want to say friendly asshole, but, like, he refers to himself as a plugger many times. Or no, sorry, a duffer, because
Right.
that's a golfer thing.
Yeah,
But I kept getting it mixed up with pluggers in my head, which is, you know, the long-running comic strip
The
about...
terrifying comic strip
Yeah.
about horrible mutant animal humans having awful working class lives.
Yeah, I think of it as like proto Jeff Foxworthy, where
Yeah.
it's like, you might be a plugger if you turned off the TV at 9 every night to save power.
Yeah.
Like, that's how this guy strikes me.
Yeah.
And
You
yeah,
might
I mean...
be a plugger if you have to take a pill to remember to take your pills.
Exactly. But
Life is awful in this incinerated hellscape.
what's up with this world where everyone's eyes are less than 1 inch apart, but their nose takes up 3/4 of their face?
Yeah.
No, the part that really got me is the 3 or 4 chapters where he's basically guilting his wife about how much their meal costs.
Right. I get that. I had a slightly different take. I thought it was a more kind of loving and affectionate take on a kind of mature relationship that has a little bit of banter around financial issues and where both parties can kind of allow the other one the slack in the rope to maybe not be their best selves all the time. And I want to prove it with a lengthy reading, as is my want.
Perfect.
The Cedar Bay Public Golf Course is going to seem pretty ho-hum to you after 2 days on the Sonoma Golf Club course.
La-ti-da, look at this rich guy over here.
You've got that right. I was wondering when I was driving here if it's the golf clubs. The ones I rented were really good. Maybe I need to get a new set. I've had the ones at home for a long, long time. Mike, I don't know a thing about golf clubs. Are they expensive? He was quiet for a few moments. I'm trying to think how to phrase this. Could we say what we spent last night for dinner? We did.
Shut up, Mike.
Because you own a coffee shop and needed to get new ideas for your menu? Maybe we could write the cost of the dinner off as a business expense on our tax return. If we did that, I could justify the cost of my new clubs. That expensive, huh? She asked, zipping up her carry-on bag. Yeah. I think we better table this discussion for another time.
Admittedly, no, it's good spirited. I'm not
Shut
here.
the fuck down, Mike.
Yeah.
You just got fucking told. Like, you've been bitching and moaning. It's true about the cost of the dinner, but when you floated, like, maybe it's time for old Goose to get some of the gander sauce. Or maybe I flip that. If I'm wrong, do not at me.
The gander sauce.
Yeah.
Ew.
He just like
So that's a fancy ingredient in one of these restaurants they go to.
exactly. The hammer gets dropped, and no golf clubs for Mike.
No, I agree. I mean, he's a good-natured asshole. That's, I think, what I'm trying to describe. Is he's just kind of like one of those dudes that you would consider like a friendly grump. He's crotchety.
Dude, I'm sitting right here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that could easily apply to me as well. You've seen my internet presence.
Okay, so should we do some high points and low points?
Yeah, we should.
High points are high, and low points are low. High points, low points, get ready to go.
You want to go first here? Let's start out with some high points.
All right. There's just so many. I'm gonna try to keep it narrow here. The transitions in this book, especially the conversational transitions in this book,
We have almost the same first high point.
are just stunning. So here is the second best winemaker. No, sorry. This is the best winemaker in Sonoma offering the widower the job of head winemaker at his winery that his wife used to have but doesn't have anymore
Because she died yesterday.
because she died yesterday. One last question, Matteo. If he offers you the job of winemaker, will you take it? It has been a dream of mine since Signor Moretti asked Angela and me to come to California. Yes, I will, even though the dream has turned into a nightmare. Excuse me, I need to get my shoes. That, I don't know why, that put a smile on my face and like a song in my heart as I put the Kindle down and went to get another beer.
My first high point is very, very similar. Because it also has to do with the prose, but I love how expository all of the dialogue in this book is. Because essentially every character ceases to be a character when someone else is speaking to them. And at that point, they just become an audience surrogate that needs to have everything explained to them, regardless of like what their area of expertise is in the world of this book. As soon as somebody's talking to them about anything that has to do with the plot or anything technical, they are a tabula rasa.
Yeah.
And I have a really good example of this that I'm very happy with. This is actually on page 1 of the actual book.
That's great, because I was going to ask you if you were talking about the second or third page.
This is Angela speaking to her husband. I mean it. Think about it, Matteo. We could never afford a large house like this on our own and live in one of the most beautiful places in all of California. I've gotten to really like the people here, both at the vineyard and in town, and I love my job. When I was a young woman studying winemaking in Umbria, I never dreamed it would lead me here. Or to me, Matteo murmured, kissing her forehead. She smiled at him and continued, nor did I think I would find my future husband there. I'm glad my parents agreed to send me to the school in Umbria, and how fortunate both of us were to get jobs with the Moretti vineyard in Tuscany. I'm grateful that when Signor and Signora Moretti asked me to be their winemaker at their new vineyard in Sonoma, they had a friend, Signor Romano, who also had a vineyard here in Sonoma, and that he would hire you as a winemaker. I think we have to be the luckiest two people in the world.
So do I, amore mio, the muscular dark-haired man said, stroking his wife's hair. But I wish the wine Signor Romano produces at his vineyard was as coveted as the Moretti label. I envy you for being the head winemaker here. Angela nuzzled closer to him. Ah, Matteo, we've talked about this before, but I never think of us as having different jobs. We're a couple. I just happen to be working for Signor Moretti, and you just happen to be working for Signor Romano. I think our jobs are very much the same. We are equals. That's very gracious of you, Angela, but we both know that the wines from the Moretti winery are far more highly regarded than the Romano wines. I do the best I can with what they have on the property, but every year, in tasting competitions, our wines always place second to those from the Moretti winery.
This is how real people talk to one another.
Like, that's the third page of the book.
Yeah, and so, I mean, technically, that's, I guess, a low point, because from a craft standpoint, this is pretty fucking horrible, but oh my god, I was laughing out loud reading this, because this is just, like, when people, as soon as a conversation begins, it's an exposition dump, and it's hilarious.
You know right what you're reading very, very quickly. And just from an exposition density standpoint, I don't know that I've ever seen that bettered.
No, it's great. Like, I mean, I couldn't write that on purpose if I was trying to write a funny, like, expository conversation, and kudos. So yeah, that's my first high point. I guess low points?
Yeah, so we haven't really touched on this. This book is not actually a mystery.
No, it's not.
It's basically a travel novel with a character encountering a mystery and not really having that much to do with it, but going some new places because of the mystery they've encountered. And then the mystery kind of solves itself when she happens to go to the bathroom. And that's actually kind of enjoyable to me. I like the genre. I like travel books just fine.
It's kind of Eat, Pray, Love with a bad mystery in the background in a way, but much more poorly written.
Yeah. I haven't read Eat, Pray, Love. I'm going to take your word for it.
It's a good book, actually. I enjoyed it.
And so, the bulk of it, I'm kind of enjoying. She's going to places that are not places I've been, but are places like places I've been. They're in California. There's a lot of people of Italian descent here. They go to an Italian restaurant and they have a wonderful time. I've done that. I love this. I'm enjoying reading this. Except then they go to a table that has been explicitly described as farm to table. And they have a tomato dish that's just raw tomato, little bit of balsamic,
It's bruschetta.
little bit of salt on nice bread. That's a great dish, and I love it. Except this book is taking place in mid-fall. And I don't like the idea of a farm-to-table restaurant doing raw tomato dishes in late fall.
Out of season.
Out of season. False note to me. Really took me out of chapter 24, and that's 3 pages I'll never get back.
Alice Waters would not approve.
And neither do I.
That food, not slow at all.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I actually took it even a step further in my notes, and I was wondering at one point, I said that a lot of this really feels like it could have been written for Sonoma County. Has a municipality ever commissioned a murder mystery novel to market itself as a tourist destination? Because that's kind of what this feels like.
If I were going to be fully cynical, I would want to know if the funding model of this author does include a line item for content marketing for certain places.
Yeah.
Because,
I want to know how many of the stores and restaurants in this really exist.
Yeah. You did kind of expect the silky voice to come in at any moment, promotional consideration paid for by the following.
I can't hear that phrase without thinking of Lord Alfred Hayes, and it's always promotional consideration paid for by the following: Yipe Stripes, Fruit Stripes, bubblegum.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, sorry.
We know from the preface that this author did in fact visit Sonoma, had
And
a wonderful
loved
time.
it. Yeah.
Wanted to bang out a book about it. She would also by far not be the first person to crib heavily from a guidebook while writing their novel. But it does seem to go a little bit farther past the guidebook presentation into active boosterism.
Yeah.
And I think that's just because this is meant to be very cozy, very comforting. In a normal book, she might have taken a wrong turn into a dark alley into the mean streets in the bad neighborhood of Old Sonoma.
That exists.
That doesn't happen here. Well, it does, because those wineries have people that have to work in them. And
That's
those
true.
people,
Ooh,
they
and
don't
we
get to
didn't
live
talk
in
about the
fun
most
places.
problematic sentence, which happens almost first in this book.
Yeah.
And it says something about how their field manager, Juan, expertly picked the migrants who worked on the farm. And it's oh, I know what that actually means.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah, what it means is that we've got an economy that's built only to run with illegal labor.
Yeah, exactly. And those guys are not getting paid what they deserve. Thanks. But anyway, moving on. My first low point is in all caps. How many times do you need to explain sandals to me? Because, Christ almighty, sandals play such a huge role in this, and every single time that someone mentions sandals, it's mentioned what they look like, a.k.a. they have a strap, and B, why people in wineries wear them, which is they take them off when they go into the wine-producing rooms so that they're not spreading mud around from the vineyard into the vat area,
Right.
which makes perfect sense. Much like I've done several brewery tours for beers, I've been to a couple winery tours. You don't want pollutants in the air that are going to get into the vats and fuck up your product, right? So you have people in clean suits, or in the case of wineries, removing their muddy ass shoes. But seriously, every single character in this book wears sandals, and every single character's sandals are explained to you in detail about the what, the how, and the why. And it is so fucking irritating.
This is not a book that wants you to be uneasy that you might have missed something. So it's gonna go ahead and reiterate the important sandal clues.
Well, also, I mean, as we mentioned, or I don't know if we have mentioned it, but sandals do play a pretty big part in our final reveal.
Oh yeah, so this is a sandal manufacturer that, number one, each color of each size has a distinct sole pattern.
Just like real life.
So if you see any given sole pattern, you know that that's a red size 5 as opposed to a blue size 5. That's pretty distinctive. 2, the store that sells all the sandals in the town which everybody wears has only ever sold one pair of size 4s.
Yes, size 4 women's, it should be mentioned.
No. Put a pin in that.
Okay.
It's worse than that.
Put in that.
They've only ever sold one pair of size 4s, which is the size that was found at the murder scene that does not match the victim's shoe prints. 3, these cannot be sold on Amazon because plot reasons.
Well, I mean, also because that's just good ethics.
Now, that doesn't go anywhere in the actual book. That's just stated in that order, basically verbatim, by the shoe store lady, except that they're a size 4, and the detective says, sound like women's shoes. And somebody answers, could be a very small man. Dude, a size 4?
I mean, we live in America. Women's and men's shoe sizes are different.
Are different, number one, but a size 4 of anything on a full-grown man?
That man would have tiny feet.
That man would have tiny feet.
And yeah, for sure, you would know immediately who was responsible for the crime. It's the guy with tiny feet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A spoiler, it's not the guy with tiny feet.
But no, it did bug me that the detective says, we found a set of size 4 prints, but doesn't actually distinctly say size 4 men versus size 4 women. Whereas, I mean, in other areas, people share shoe sizes. For some reason in America, we've decided to stratify them, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But I have a feeling that law enforcement documents would, in fact, draw a distinction between this is a men's size 4 and this is a women's size 4.
You'd kind of hope so.
Yeah. But anyway, so sandals.
Yeah.
That's
so
my first low point.
First low point, so. I guess that means I have to do a second low point. So after the giant restaurant kind of splurge, Mike gets up very early in the morning to go play golf again.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't like golf, except that he ends up playing golf and turns out to be, when he's in Sonoma, supernaturally good at golf, such that younger men are asking him, did you used to be a pro?
Sure did.
And Angela showing sort of a self-punishing streak that Kelly showing a self-punishing streak that I really did not like, has for breakfast the next day a single piece of dry toast.
Yeah, you're on vacation.
Yeah, come on.
She says, I had to have a very light breakfast after our big dinner last night. It's like, fuck that. Get the Eggs Benedict.
Exactly. Come on.
You're living large. Your husband's out there playing golf.
Exactly. Especially, you're at a B&B.
Yeah.
You are paying a substantial premium for the fact that there's a second B in there.
That's true. It's not a B&T for bed and toast.
Yeah, they take real pride in what they do in the morning for you. It's almost rude to not avail yourself of it. Kelly, what were you thinking?
Get that poached egg. Get that ham steak. Get it, girl.
Come on. Second cup of coffee never killed anybody. Yeah. I really did not appreciate that particular moment. I might have read this book a little hungrier than my average.
Oh, no, me too. And this leads right into my second low point, actually, which is that this book made me want to drink a lot of wine. But it turns out if I have like 2 sips of red wine, I get a hangover equivalent to if I drank like, say, a 12-pack of Budweiser.
Right.
So I think I might be allergic to something in red wine, but I don't like to self-diagnose with allergies. I just stopped drinking it. I don't enjoy the taste of white wine. This book made me want to drink wine so bad, and I can't.
It's really funny, though, because the characters in it also, are constantly murmuring to each other that they like the wine, but they're not big drinkers. So, they go to a wine tasting, and they basically split a wine tasting.
Yeah, and they use the spit bucket, which, to be fair, I've been on a wine tasting. I've done that. It's still a lot of fun. You get a lot of delicious cheese and crostini and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this book... while I was reading it, I was like, I should have a big old glass of Cabernet.
Yeah.
And I can't do that. I get sick as fuck.
Right. But it's weird to set it in wine country and have kind of fairly loving, detailed descriptions of wine, but like it's almost like they're afraid that people will read this and like think it's for wine moms if they do drink too much wine or something. I don't know.
Both of our heroine and her husband are very much teetotalers.
Yeah.
Like, they do not drink a lot. Like, even when they go out, they order iced tea, and it's
Right.
like, you're in Sonoma County, motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Get some wine. And get that extra ham steak, like
Exactly.
I said earlier.
And that Sonoma, we all know that if you want iced tea, you go to Napa.
Iced tea in California, I'm not even going to get into that. I could do a whole show about what California considers iced tea, and it's gnarly. There's no sugar in that shit at all.
Iced tea is, in general, gross. The only thing grosser than iced tea is the southern abomination known as sweet tea.
Ooh, buddy, we're
Do
fighting.
not at me.
We're fighting. You know, last time around we mentioned Sonny's Restaurant. Let me tell you something about Sonny's Restaurant. They got the best damn sweet tea you'll ever have.
Yeah, is it like a third Sprite?
Yeah, maybe. Like, they just dump a vat of sugar into each pitcher, but it's so good.
Yeah, when I was a kid, we would make sun tea a lot, and like let's just say I learned about super saturating, basically by sugaring my sun tea.
If you
as a
boiled
kid.
your sun tea, it would have turned into rock candy.
Exactly.
Awesome.
I would say, if you like flicked the glass, it would occasionally cause the whole thing to crystallize.
Nice. All right, 2 more high points.
Yep.
You first.
Okay, so there's a certain kind of book, and you see it maybe even more in movies, where people kind of describe it as competence porn. You know, you're just watching. It's not like James Bond's been described that way, where you're just watching somebody who's extremely good at what they do what they do. And this is sort of that in the world of comfortable late middle-aged people, because in the space of 3 pages, 2 people with full-time jobs plan a family vacation of a week in length, including taking time off work, finding lodging, planning activities, identifying places to eat, getting free kenneling for their 3 dogs.
Because they know the right people.
Because they know the right people, meeting their 2 children whose own children are magically off screen. And it's just this like kind of like...
Do they plan a Disneyland vacation right away?
Lengthily, yeah. And like, let's just say, you know, reading that, I had twinges where I was like, wow, these wishes they're just getting fulfilled. And it was like, you know how Erica Young had the zipless fuck? This was like the zipless family vacation.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to read. And I really enjoyed it. Like it you know, this kind of fantasy resonates with me. So that was a real high point.
One thing I will say is that this is definitely a hallmark of the genre, right? Like, I mean, even there was a series on HBO a while ago, the Miss Fisher murder mysteries, about an Australian woman who was a detective, and like magically when she needed to, she could do things like fly a helicopter or stuff like that, you know. And it's everything she needed to do to get the job done, she could do, and that is kind of part of this cozy mystery world, and I find it really endearing as well, because like no one even feels the need to justify it. It's just like, our characters are badass, they could do what they need to do. It doesn't matter if what they need to do is kind of banal, they're still just gonna fucking do it and get it done. And I agree, that's a high point, because a lot of other books would have spent, I don't know, a couple chapters with them trying to figure out how to kennel their dogs, whereas here it's just like, hey, we know everyone in town, let's put the dogs up here.
And just like the level of obstacles in this book, they all get surmounted, but the level of obstacles, you almost expect, like, Mike, we can't possibly go on vacation with the kids. You said you were going to mow the back lawn, and that's over an acre. And then like a head would pop in the window like, hey, Kelly and Mike, my son needs some practice using our new riding mower.
Exactly.
Mind if I ask him to mow your half-acre backyard?
No, and yeah, exactly. For my last high point, I'm just going to say that the author really loves dogs, and there are
she
just
loves
some
dogs so
great
much.
descriptions of dogs doing dog things that are really cute and awesome. Like, anytime a dog turns up in this story, it is adorable.
Yeah.
Like, there's a part where one of the characters comes home to their dog. She's described as, quote unquote, dancing around.
Yep.
This is the dog, not the human. Dancing around the yard, yipping, just being very cute. And
Mom's
like,
home, Mom's home.
Yeah, you could tell who the woman who wrote this book probably has 5 or 6 dogs, loves them more than life itself, and I respect that greatly. And she's really good at portraying cute dog behavior on the page, which to me, it's one of the hallmarks of a good writer. So definitely A+ on that.
And pretty good.
And none of them die.
Yeah. So do not worry about that.
Yeah, it's not a John Wick situation here. All of our dogs stay on this corporeal plane until the end of the book. So
You bastard.
oh, well, now that we're thinking about depressing things, why don't we go ahead and take a break, and we'll be back to play some games.
When they get drunk, they singing all night, drinking wine, spooty ooty, drinking wine. Wine, spooty ooty, drinking wine. Wine, spooty ooty, drinking wine. Pass that bottle to me. Hey, buying it by the gallon and buy it by the quart. Buy a blackberry, you're doing things smart. Knocking out windows and tearing down.
Welcome back. We've been swilling wine and spitting it into a bucket, and we're here to play some fucking games.
We've got some game pairings prepared for you this afternoon that should go quite well with the scintillating prose and tangy flavors of... No, it's not murder by chocolate, it's death by wine.
This one would go very well with a soft cheese, which is also how I would describe this book.
Oh my God, this book would have... You know, I will tell you, this book went extraordinarily well with my simple dinner last night.
Oh, I'm just saying it is some soft chease.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, let's start out with the most highly lauded, acclaimed, and award-winning wine segment in podcasting history.
Sorry, other podcasts that don't exist anyway, for always coming in second in the illustrious podcast segment awards, the Seggies.
That's true, the Seggies. And we are, of course, the Moretti podcast, and this here is Dramatic Readings.
Dramatic readings. We're gonna make it sound recorded. Dramatic readings. Yeah, I got some words for you.
All right, so Dramatic Readings. We're going to take parts of this book, read them to you, and try to make them sound more dramatic than they are, which I imagine will not be difficult. So I'm going to start out here with a scene where our heroes, Mike and Kelly, our Sheriff Mike, I should say, and Kelly are checking into a bed and breakfast.
Well, why would you say Sheriff Mike, Jay?
Because that's how he's mentioned almost every time. He is Sheriff Mike. Much like Bob the Builder, or, you know, he's one of these guys who has his profession inextricably linked to his name.
Like my 18th favorite joke. Yeah, I build fences all my life. Do they call me Chris the Fence Builder?
Oh, this is the sheep fucker joke, isn't it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, anyway, rolling on. Here we go. When they opened the front door, they were greeted by a young woman. Welcome to the Sonoma Bed and Breakfast. My name is Bree. Since you have luggage, I assume you'll be staying with us. Yes, Kelly said. We have a reservation under the name of Reynolds. The young woman checked her computer and said, Here it is. I show Sheriff Mike and Kelly Reynolds. Is that right? That's us. What do you need? May I see a form of identification and the credit card you'll be using to pay for the room? Certainly. A few minutes later, the young woman said, You'll be staying in the Figueroa room. Governor Figueroa was sent to Sonoma by the Mexican government in 1835 to protect the area from foreigners, particularly the Russians who were encroaching on the area north of San Francisco. Actually, it's my favorite room. Just go up the stairs, and it's the room at the end of the hall. I guess the reason I like it is because it's quite large. Most renovated Queen Anne homes have relatively small rooms. Thank you for your help, Kelly said, accepting... Pardon me. Thank you for your help, Kelly said, accepting the room key. Our daughter and son-in-law will be here shortly. Would you let them know which room we're in? Actually, your daughter called and requested that the Figueroa room be reserved for you. She'd read about us on the internet and found out it was our largest room. I remember talking to her because I thought that was a very sweet thing for her to do. So do I, Kelly said. I'm sure we'll enjoy it. So, folks, if you didn't know how checking into a hotel works, you do now.
I mean, I like that Bree is...
It's a clever name.
It's a pretty clever name, but I like also that, you know, she's got the detective's eye herself. Since you've got luggage, I assume you'll be wanting to check in. Do I smell a spin-off series?
Detective Bree. The fastest gun in Sonoma.
But yeah, like, you did such justice to it. Like, the experience of reading this is just like one character disgorging paragraphs of text at the others, like a fucking container ship getting unloaded. It's amazing.
I don't consider myself to be an impatient man. And like when I'm in a situation where I have to interact with, you know, like someone who's in the service industry, I try very hard not to interrupt them. Like if my waiter wants to read the specials,
Right.
I'm not going to be the guy who's like, I already know what I want. But I think if someone was to disgorge this much information to me about something, I'd be like, just run the damn credit card already.
That's my favorite room. I think it's my favorite room because shut
Yeah.
up.
Cool. Here's my card. Where's the key? Let's get on with this.
I just got off a plane, dealt with a rental car agency, dealt with fucking Highway 12 traffic to get here. We flew into Sacramento because we're insane. So can we just make with the key so I can like take my goddamn shoes off?
Yeah, I need a nap. Yeah, I mean, you know, like I said, I consider myself to be very patient in these kind of situations. This would have probably pushed me over the edge into problem customer territory.
Yeah, but that again is I guess I need to remind myself and you know, and I guess to a lesser extent you know, that's again part of the bed and breakfast experience. It's not like a efficient hotel shuttling you from place to place. You're entering into a real relationship with these people.
And this is why I refuse to stay at bed and breakfasts and Airbnbs, because I don't want to be friends with someone. I just want a place to go to sleep at night. A place to wander in drunk and pass out.
Speaking of wandering in drunk and passing out, let's check on the other sheriff in this particular book, shall we?
Oh, yeah. The sheriff of Sonoma.
Yeah. Kelly told him about her conversation with Josie and ended a half hour later.
Oh, my God. Sorry. Just imagine that. Just rewind that in your head and imagine that as like a scene in a movie or in your life.
Right. By saying, I hope I didn't bore you by duplicating what you've probably already found out. If I've said...
No, but you bored me for talking 30 minutes without an interruption. Anyway, sorry.
If I've said anything that helps, I'm glad I was able to be of assistance. I know Mike always says that nothing is insignificant when you're trying to solve a murder mystery. Sheriff Dawson laughed and turned towards Mike. Sheriff, you have to be the luckiest man in the world. I think I am, but what makes you say that? I spent most of last night with Josie, Jim, and my deputies. Other than the obvious husband, not one person of interest was mentioned. Your wife has found out more in a morning than I could have in several days. You've just saved me and my deputies a lot of time and work. Since your hands are going to be full sifting through what your deputies find, it might help if Kelly and I see what we can find out about the persons of interest. No one knows us in the area, and we might be able to find out more than someone associated with the sheriff's department could. Sheriff Dawson was quiet for a few moments, and then said, I think that's an excellent idea, and I can't thank you both enough for volunteering to spend your vacation helping my department. Just sit here for a moment, and I'll be right back, he said, as he walked out the door, closing it softly behind him. What do you think he's doing? Kelly asked. I have no idea. The door opened a few minutes later, and the sheriff returned. Sheriff Reynolds, I'm assuming that if your wife didn't want to take the time to register a gun with the airlines, you didn't either. Here's a gun for each of you.
Look under your seat. You get a gun. You get a gun.
Here's a gun for each of you. They're registered to me, so they won't be a problem.
Just shoot anyone you want.
Try not to use them, but we all know there are times when it's necessary. Like, the only thing he doesn't do is then hand them, like, and if it comes to it, plant this on who you shoot.
Here's a cyanide pill to hide in your hollow tooth. Which, it should be mentioned, the guns are never used, which is a high point. There's no shooting deaths in this book, and at this point in American history, that's novel.
Jesus Christ.
But yeah, the you get a gun thing. I also, too, like that, I don't know a lot about law enforcement, but I have a feeling if someone were to hand you a firearm, they would maybe tell you what kind it was and not just be like, here's a gun, which to me very much feels like how I would describe that in that situation. Like, oh, here's a gun, I guess.
It's
you pull the trigger, it goes shoot.
if you hold it like this, you can kind of use it as a hammer, I guess. I saw this documentary about pistol whipping.
I mean, it's been hard, right? And I don't want to dip back into stuff I've talked about previously, but I know last episode I mentioned Endeavor, and I've been watching a lot of Endeavor, and it gets very, very dense in clues, like to the point where they'll be mentioning the types of guns involved in a crime because it'll point you to a particular suspect that say they're using a Walther PPK, which is a German gun in the 1940s, Like, you'd be like, oh, I think I know who that is. Or things come back to you later that you realize, like, oh, if I was paying attention, I could have pieced this together. This book, none of that happens.
Or if you spend enough time in the bathroom, maybe somebody will just sort of like spontaneously implicate somebody else next to you.
Yeah. So that's this experience in a nutshell. You want to move on to another game?
Yeah, definitely.
Let's do a What Would They Do?
Ooh.
Sometimes the tensions are hard to define, and others the clear as day. So tell me, what would they do?
All right, so what would they do? We put ourselves into the shoes of characters in this book. In this, I have one character in particular for both of us.
Okay.
And I'd like you to go first. And
dear.
we did a little bit of backstory here. So the owner of Moretti Wines, his wife grew up on a family estate in Tuscany, and all of their wines have a story that goes along with the name that relates to this. For example, they have a wine named Scala, which is named after a secret cubbyhole under the staircase that this woman would hide in as a child, and her parents couldn't find her. And so all of their wines are named after, say, a memory from childhood, and that adds a whimsical quality. So following this line of reasoning, what would be the name of your brand of special childhood memory wine? How would it taste, and what's it a reference to?
Okay, it would be called Flick of the Switcha. It would taste like paint thinner. And it would be a reference to my 10th Christmas, where I was given my first tape player and 4 tapes. One of which was AC/DC's Flick of the Switch, a decision I have never understood on the part of my mother. I assume it was just on turbo sale.
It was at the end cap in Kmart, probably.
Exactly. And
I think that's the natural home of Flick of the Switch.
And it absolutely shaped my musical tastes from 1984 to this very day.
So we're along the same lines, and admittedly, I had some more forethought.
Yeah, a little more time to prep.
Forethought, because, this was my idea. But I think my wine would be called Wanna Come to Band Practice? And it's a reference to the musty Central Florida garage with no air conditioning, where I'd try to impress potential love interest by playing very bad Rancid and Sam I Am covers. It would taste like grape soda with hints of menthol cigarette breath, but saltier.
Delish.
Yeah, yum. So you had a What Would They Do as well, right?
I do. So in chapter 5, we're actually introduced to our heroes. And in a normal book, the following beginning of chapter 5 would be completely incomprehensible. Well, in fact, in this book, it was completely incomprehensible because I haven't read anything before in the series. Mike, I just got an email from Julia, Kelly said as she walked into the kitchen. She and Brad want to meet us in Sonoma. The only proper noun I have any referent for in that entire thing is Sonoma. Like, I don't know who Mike is. I don't know who Julia is. I don't know who Kelly is. Anyway, the next page, it's revealed that Mike is drinking his coffee out of a mug that reads, "Trust me, I'm a sheriff." Kelly is drinking her coffee in a mug that reads Boss Babe. So, Jay, I'm assuming that in the world of Cedar Bay, you now exist. You have to have a mug that explains your personality. What does your mug say?
World's greatest pastiche artist.
Ooh.
It's a very narrow, situation to want to excel in, but
Right.
I feel like it's pretty accurate.
Yeah. I guess mine would probably just say, like, guy who dies in the second chapter.
It's way more topical, but yeah. Mine would be guy who plays slide guitar during seed breaks.
Ooh,
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, I guess another good one would be something like just like red herring. Like,
Yeah. Wasn't it James?
sketchy ex-boyfriend, but when I hold it with my left hand, you can read the backside, and it reads, "But he didn't kill her."
I think I heard an interview with James Urbaniak talking about like all of his appearances on Law and Order and stuff, where he described himself as constantly playing the character of Professor Red Herring.
Yeah.
And that has stuck with me for so long.
So long.
So I know you have a what is your fave, so let's do that.
What is your fave? What is your fave? When you're presented with a list of options, what is your fave?
So in this book, it's been mentioned that there's a lot of food had.
Yes.
Tested, tried, experimented with, enjoyed, and discussed at some length. Like, this is a book where the discovery of a murder kind of impinges on their plans, but not really, because they still knock off at 4 to get the early bird special at the Michelin star restaurant every night.
It definitely takes a backseat to the tasting menu for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't actually drop everything to drive into the foothills to go like bird watching, but you sense that they might have if somebody had offered it or if they'd had a Groupon.
This is a Groupon novel. You're right. Totally. Hot stone massage? Fuck this murder.
Yeah. Like, sucks to be you, Angela. Peace. So I'm going to read you the recipes that the book ends with. And I don't mean like they just describe the food. I mean, this book ends with freaking recipes.
Yeah,
So-
I thought I had a long way to go, and it turns out the last 10% of this book is recipes.
Yeah. And that, by the way, is the last, say, 10 or 15 pages of this 150-page volume.
Yeah, it's a slim one.
It's a slim one. Okay, so what is your favorite out of the recipes? Is it Mexican salad with chicken and raspberry chipotle dressing?
Fuck is a Mexican salad?
Well, Jay.
Is that like the Mexican pizza from Taco Bell? Or?
Oh, it's a taco salad,
Okay, yeah.
basically.
It's a white person's version of Mexican food. Anyway, continue. No.
Gold Star Mother's Day dessert. Muffin meatloaves. Pappardelle carbonara. Tomato tapas.
Which is, by the way, bruschetta.
Yeah. Or just some really, really good chocolate formed into a cup with some champagne poured into it.
I like to call that the drunken Reese's.
Yeah.
No, for me, and to quote this book, you had me at the word meatloaf,
Right.
which is actually two words.
2 words. Yeah.
But yeah, the meatloaf muffin, I really like the idea because I do like small portions of delicious food. And also what they're basically describing is what the English would call a pudding.
Right.
And I like that shit, so I'm down with it. That's my fave.
Although I gotta read this because it's just slightly too amazing not to. When they're having the meatloaf, so Mike is asked what he thinks of it. Like, they're excellent, and what a great idea for lunch. I really like the muffin idea. It's just like a regular meatloaf, but the muffin shape is unique, and you don't overeat because it's just the right size. You could even serve 2 muffin meatloaves, and then a customer could always take one home. It's a great idea. Like, you could serve 2 and they could take one home is the most insane thing I have read in a book this year.
Well, it should be mentioned, we haven't really gotten into it a ton, but, our main protagonist here, our mystery-solving sheriff's wife... I have to look up her
Kelly.
name again, Kelly, because all the names are so forgettable. She runs a coffee shop, so she's constantly doing research for new things she can put on the menu at her coffee shop, and she gets real excited about these muffins.
She gets really excited about almost everything, which I really enjoy. Like you said about author's obvious enthusiasm for dogs. There's like a real passion for like enjoying food, and there's like a bunch of really endearing moments. Like her daughter discovers dipping fresh bread into a little bit of balsamic
vinegar
and olive oil, and it's like, Mom, you have no idea how fucking good this is.
It's like they've never been out to eat before in their entire life. Like, I mean, maybe it's because I live
it so much.
Maybe because I live in the Bay Area, I've been spoiled. Because I think about this, and in Florida, that was not a thing that happened a lot. But like dipping a piece of bread into a mixture of balsamic vinegar, olive oil, and salt is kind of the standard thing that happens for your first course at a restaurant out here.
I definitely first had it at a restaurant in a mall in Colorado, but I mean that's the pitch of this book. That's the audience for this book. There's also like a lot of kind of anxious talk about what it's like to look at a menu and not see prices.
Oh yeah. And
like
that's all coming from our sheriff friend.
Well, that's all coming from our sheriff friend, but that's also like I've had those conversations verbatim. You know what I mean? Like that this book is not necessarily for me, but like I know exactly where that comes from because I come from there.
Let's do one more game before we call it quits. Let's do most famous fan.
The rich and the famous, but they read books too. The rich and the famous, but they're only a little better than you.
Okay, Collision. This one, we're going to start with you. Who do you think the most famous fan of this book is? This thrilling tale of wine and murder.
I have... Carlo Rossi? No, I don't know if that was even a real guy.
He was one of the brothers. I don't know if they were real or not, but he would sell none before its time.
Yeah, I got some real bad news for you, Carlo. Your legacy basically consists of selling jugs so big that their primary use is actually keeping in your bedroom for the times when you want to take a piss but don't want to put your pants on to leave the room.
At least it doesn't turn your tongue black like Thunderbird.
Yeah. Okay, so I have two answers to this. I guess my first would be the author is actually married to a former state senator from California.
Oh, I didn't know this.
So for a certain excruciatingly narrow version of fame, maybe him. And in a much funnier version, and this joke will be spoiled to anybody who got the big background image I'm going to use when I do the show notes, it would be Dave Mustaine of Megadeth fame and "Hello, me, it's me again" fame, who's opened up a couple of wineries of his own for reasons that remain obscure.
See, I knew Homeboy from Tool had some wineries. I did not realize Dave Mustaine was also doing wineries.
Yeah.
It's kind of like how, like, you know, Steve Austin has his own IPA now. I guess when you're like a metal guy instead of a pro wrestler, you start a winery.
Okay, forgive me. It's time for a Dave Mustaine digression. The reason he founded the winery is apparently he had some weird Megadeth gig with the, I think, San Diego Philharmonic, where they did like...
Oh, that sounds horrible.
Orchestral thrash, which is just as great an idea as it always was.
Those poor symphonic musicians who have studied their whole lives to be part of this group, and then they're like, how fast can you play an E?
Okay, first off, Megadeth is way more complicated than wailing on the open E. Second off, Megadeth, out of the big four metal bands, is the most consistent start to finish. Do not at me. Third of all, apparently he like hooked up some wine to be served at that, enjoyed the process so much, he was like, I should have my own winery. And now he does have his own winery. And you know what it tastes like? If you've watched Some Kind of Monster, you do. It tastes like...
a hole of dirt that somebody smoked weed through with Lars Ulrich's dad?
Sour grapes.
Oh, shit. Damn. Blammo. You got him.
I think we just won another Seggy for that one, Jay.
For sure. I don't know, because I'm about to go way out in the left field.
Uh-oh.
There's a good chance we may have to edit this out. We'll see. I would say the most famous fan of this book is Rex Ryan.
Oh no!
Because I'm not trying to kink shame because people are into what they're into, but this book talks about sandals a lot. And I don't think the author intended it to come off as creepy as it does. But there is a lot of discussion of sandals, the feet that go in the sandals. Every character's footwear is described in detail. It's almost always sandals, and it's always the most detailed description of any article of clothing that they're wearing. The mystery is literally solved by our hero stealing a pair of hot murder lady's sandals and bringing them to the police office. And Rex would be having a field day with this. Like, I just had so many humana Rex Ryan vibes. Like, oh boy. Also, she's a size 4. I'm just saying, Rex Ryan would love this book.
I think you're on sound footing.
Oof.
So this doesn't fit anywhere else, but I do just want to say that, like, one of my notes that I just saw while we were playing games was this block quote of mine where I was just like, God damn it, does this lengthy Disneyland digression ever pay off? And because I'm incredibly stupid, I didn't realize till I was driving over here that, yes, the way it pays off, you dipshit, you munch, you imbecile, is that the next book is Murder at Disneyland. It has to be. I'm not going to look that up.
No, just like my favorite Ugly Kid Joe song.
What?
You never heard Madman in Disneyland?
You may have me at a disadvantage when it comes to Ugly Kid Joe.
Well, touche, my friend. I think it's time to take a break, and now I know what song I'm going to play. We'll be right back.
Disneyland's place to be. Come on, baby, just you and me, hand in hand to Disneyland.
All right, we're back. We're done talking about wine mysteries, and it's time to move on to recommendations.
Woo!
And I would recommend that when you try this wine, you pair it with this particular soft cheese. But seriously, though, what should people read or put in their heads if they're not going to read this cozy little book?
Well, I'm a little bummed that that's how you led in, because I'm going to recommend that you read Murdered by Wine, a Cedar Bay Cozy Mystery by Diane Harmon.
Damn it.
Just like, I had fun with this. Like, I don't know if it's because I don't know anything about the genre. I don't know if it's because I'm totally new to the series. There was a lot that was like mildly puzzling, but it was like, they were fun people to spend time with. It was a fun little run through some experiences that were basically comforting and pleasant. And I got no problem with that.
No, it's not a bad book by any means. Like, parts of it made me laugh a lot, but none of it made me angry, which is a rarity for this show. So I could kind of almost piggyback on that.
Right?
Yeah. It's worth checking out. I would also recommend checking out some other books of the series, because this is an author with a pretty good reputation in this world. So, you know, if you're interested in reading a mystery where the mystery doesn't really sit in the foreground,
Yeah.
this is probably a good series for you.
And just checking out the other stuff she's read, like, I think she's got stuff where, you know, she tries a little harder. Like, she's gotten some good notices in the past for like psychological horror and stuff. And I think that this is really her just trying to do what it says on the box. And by God, it says cozy mystery. What you're going to get is a cozy mystery.
Yeah, like, put a blanket, you know, like, over yourself, brew up a cup of tea, read this shit. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to recommend kind of something similar. There's an author, I'm totally going to mispronounce his name because I'm really bad with Irish names. I believe it's Came McDonnell. He's written a series called the Dublin Trilogy, and I found this really, really entertaining. I think the trilogy is now up to 4 or 5 books, which is a cheap way to go. But, you know, it's about some mysteries. It's very like slice of life, working class Irish people. There's a lovable loser protagonist. It's kind of got like almost a noir vibe, but what I really like is the way it turns a lot of your expectations on their head. A good example is one of the main characters is Bunny McGarry, who is a large, imposing Irish cop with a lazy eye who, you know, he's Irish. He swears a lot. He hits people with his hurling stick, things like that. But when people say homophobic bullshit around him, he's like, that's not cool.
Oh, I like
so
that.
I think it's a really, really good way to kind of read a book that fits into that kind of I wouldn't say cozy mystery as much as kind of the neo-noir style, but it really does turn a lot of things on its head.
Huh. It sounds like your recommendation might actually be... You know what? No, I'm going to triple down on mine. Don't read Jay's recommendation. That sounds awful.
Or read both.
Whoa.
Okay, so sometimes we get correspondence.
We do. And sometimes it's even not about recommendations.
So here is a song.
A, letter B, letter C, letter D, letter E, letter F, letter G, letter... Got a lot of letters.
So I understand we have some letters.
We do. I'm going to start it off like this. Yours, from England, Matt, fake last name, actual surname, fake last name, but if you end up reading this and want to pretend I'm descended from the Sussex fake last names, owners of Fake Last Name Hall in Shropshire, I'm game.
By the way, very sorry that it did not come home, but we'll continue.
Huh?
It's a World Cup thing.
Oh, it didn't. It fuck all came home, not football came home. Anyway, this leapt off the email screen when I read the subject line, which goes thusly: Is Seagal's ghostwriter trolling him? Hi, guys. Just a quick note to ask, are you absolutely sure that Tom Morrissey isn't trolling Seagal in Way of the Shadow Wolves? Quite aside from describing Seagal's bad acting as being his mastery of stone or possibly tiger face, and giving him dialogue that sounds like parody of the man at his monotone, whispery worst, the surname of his, quote, character, thanks for spelling it out on air, is French for dildo.
Holy shit!
Don't ask me how I come to know the French for dildo. It's really not that interesting a story.
I mean, as I mentioned on the air, half of my family is Mohawk. Most of them reside in Ontario, do speak French as a first language, albeit the Canadian version. So if this guy knows anything about Mohawk culture, there's a very good chance that's not an accident.
So, given that he's being called Big and Dildo the whole way through,
John Dildo.
I can't help but picture a scene of poor beleaguered Tom, who once had visions of writing the next great American novel, seething with tiger-faced rage, as he's forced to listen to Seagal breathily detailing grubby, yet strangely sexless fantasies about resisting the allure of Muslim, terrorist, deep state, supermodel, bartenders. I picture him losing control and hammering out a solid page of text where the bad guys point out that the hero is the weight and shape of a bloated 3 days dead manatee corpse. And then the hero runs away crying, and then the terrorists shoot him in the back, and then they keep shooting and shooting and shooting. Then, wearily, reaching for the backspace key with his eyes firmly fixed on the framed copy of the check he's getting for putting up with this, and trying to ignore his phone ringing because he knows it's Seagal calling with another, quote, idea that he's stolen from the Sicario 2 trailer, and promising himself that when all this is done with, he'll change his name, disappear into the woods with a portable typewriter, and not come out until he's made his literary penance. I think basically I just want someone involved in the creation of this book to have known what a piece of shit it so obviously is. Love the show. Please keep it up. Yours from England.
I had never thought about this before, and now, despite my doubts, I want to believe.
I want to believe, too. I also want to commend Matt for writing something better and more entertaining than anybody else involved with the creation of that book-like object managed to. However, since we read the bio of Tom Morrissey, if he's trolling Seagal, it's not on purpose.
Yeah.
But your email definitely made me take another long, lingering look at the cover. And I think whoever cobbled that one together in Adobe, the free version, whatever.
Yeah, pixelareditor.com.
Might have had that self-awareness that I think we're all craving to project into that project.
At least one or two people involved with this project knew how silly it was. I agree with that. I really want it to be Tom now, because that would be amazing.
Right.
But yeah, unfortunately, the fact that he was a real life Border Patrol agent and stuff makes it a little hard for me to believe. But I'm going to suspend my disbelief because this is a much better story.
Exactly. Like my blanket policy with conspiracy theories is if it makes the world a more beautiful place to believe it, I'm all in. Like, if it's one of the kind of tawdry conspiracy theories that just makes everything uglier and dumber.
And that rolls back to, like, Jews control the media.
Yeah. You can hold on to that shit and you can miss me with it. But, like, if it's something that's like, I don't know, Britney Spears writes classical sonatas in her spare time and publishes it under a different name because she doesn't want to confuse people. Okay, tell me that. I'm in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'll buy into that.
2 Andrew WKs. 100% convinced that that's true.
It's better than 1 Andrew WK.
Hey-oh! I would still prefer there to be 0. Because that... Anyway. Anyway. I'm all in on this conspiracy theory. Tom Morrissey, if it's true, leave us a message in the place where we talked about that thing that time, and we'll look for your sign, Shadow Wolf brother.
Yeah. When I hold up 2 fingers at the bar, I expect to get a note from Tom Morrissey saying, yes, it's true.
Tom Morrissey, I'm about to put this, points at his hand, on this, points to the check email button, and there's nothing you can do to stop me.
And then we'll see who shits their pants for real.
Yeah. So inbox us, Tom. Your secret is safe with us.
Yeah, for sure.
That's it.
So anyway, everyone, thank you for listening. If you want to stay in touch with what we're doing, we are on Twitter. I don't even own a television. I believe IDEO TV Pod at the Twitter. Also on the Facebook. We've got the Facebook IDEO TV Pod Party Pit, where you could come and talk to lots of people. And this episode, like all of our episodes, is brought to you by our wonderful Patreon subscribers at patreon.com/IDEOTVpod. So check that out for sure.
If you want to send us an email, please, by all means, do so. I love every piece of mail we get. We can be found at I don't even own a television @gmail.com. We especially, I hate to say this, but we especially love emails that do not recommend books.
Yeah. Not to be a jerk, but we're kind of drowning in recommendations, much like someone who was murdered by being pushed into a wine vat.
There's a big vat of recommendations. Because of the fermentation process, it gives off carbon dioxide. If we linger too long there, we may fall in and die, and that would just taint the entire pool. So instead of doing that, send us an email about what you did at work that day, a cute dog you saw, a bad book you'd like us not to do, or something entertaining.
Yeah. And yes, we do know Flea has an autobiography coming out. It's on the radar. It may or may not happen, but we know about it.
The thing is, we mostly focus on bad books.
Yeah.
So maybe don't hold your breath.
Yeah, exactly. But until next time, thank you so much for listening. I am going to not drink wine because I'll get really sick. But I think I am going to eat a whole bunch of cheese.
Ooh.
Because, this book it's got my hankering up.
Mm-hmm. Saute the crab.
Yeah.
In a white wine balsamic reduction.